bring the February 10th, 2014 public meeting of the Fayette County Area Planning Commission to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll have a lot to talk about.
Okay, next on our agenda tonight, we need to take our attendance. So Brenda, if you take attendance, please.
Okay, Warren Sudoff,
Here.
Zane Bedore,
Here.
Mark Flum,
Here.
Ed Harrell,
Here.
Carl Hilton, Jason Waterman,
Here.
Gabe Nobby,
Here.
Brian Jennings,
Here.
Dick O'Neill.
Here.
Everyone's here with the exception of Carl Hilton.
Okay. Phil, would you want to take our guest last?
No, we can just have our discussion first.
Okay.
Followed it.
Okay, next up on our agenda is the approval of minutes of the January 13th, 2014 APC meeting.
I move to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay. All in favor of approval of the minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next, we have the Area Plan Commission Technical Advisory Committee discussion, report on satellite manure storage facilities.
Okay, well, what I'd like to do is I'd like to start off with the, just going through the meeting notes. And it looks as though the attachment I may have sent off, may not have gone through last week because I sent that out on Wednesday. So I'll do is it started off slowly, and just want to let you know that by the time, toward the end of that period of time, it was between an hour and a half and 2 hours, things were moving pretty quickly, so the notes are in they're not complete, but I think they catch the gist of what was going on. So there's a lot of conversation, but we really didn't make the progress that I was hoping, and I don't know if Mr. Bedore, Mr. Flum, and Mr. Harrell felt the same way, but I don't think we made as much progress really on the actual issue itself. Now, that were present were Mr. Harrell, Mr. Barry Welsh, Mr. Howard Eldridge, Mr. Mark Flum, Mr. Bedore, Mr. Matthew Bridgeford, Mr. Gary Breitenbaugh, and Mr. Waylon Whitaker were present, and Mr. Joe McDivitt was unable to attend because prior to the meeting he'd already committed himself to another activity at that time. Now the meeting was voted Mr. Flum as the chair, and started off with Mr. Harrell explaining to the Technical Advisory Committee role and the committee purpose. And the purpose is to develop siting regulations, and is not about the building in Wayne County and the property owner. And Mr. Whitaker's comment was the ordinance was aimed at waste dumping that makes an Ohio problem an Indiana problem. Ordinance would be ideally replicable in other counties and encourage other counties such as Rush to adopt or at least reciprocate the conditions of the Fayette County ordinance. Mr. Bridgeford comment was our problem is Grand Lake St. Mary's, Ohio's problem has now become an Indiana problem. It's essentially a warehousing problem. When barns are clean, manure has to be warehoused someplace immediately if conditions do not allow immediate application and will not meet Indiana's 90-day window. So if you can't meet the 90 days, it's got to be in a structure. Mr. Breitenbaugh's his biggest concern is not so much the use of the manure, but rather what is in the manure and produced by the decomposition stored manure, and that are not eliminated through the heat generated during decomposition, such as antibiotics, hormones, and then also emissions. Mr. Eldridge, introduction comment was, His concerns are nutrients and other chemicals are more concentrated in chicken manure than other manures, such as swine manure. 80% of antibiotics used in the U.S. are for animal agriculture, and most are used at subtherapeutic levels. And some of the other conversations was that organic understands that Mr. Bridgeford understands organic standards actually allow the use of manure from non-organic animal producers. Mr. Bedore, there's no issue with the farmer buying and using manure. And if I say anything that's incorrect with the gist of what you gentlemen said, please let me know. Mr. Bedore was no issue with the farmer buying and using manure. So the problem is the fact that this is being done to make a corporate problem go away by exporting the manure out of Ohio. Okay, Mr. Bridgeford's made reference to Mr. Myers buys manure from a source and pays the cost to transport the manure from the source to his property. Okay, Mr. Flum, there's no problems with buying and storing for personal use. Different problem of buying to commercially distribute manure. Okay, Mr. Harrell, do the current regulations apply if a person is buying with intent to resell? Reselling manure is a distribution license required for inorganic fertilizer. And and then various persons were discussing whether we can regulate if amounts are below IDAM permitting, and CAFO explained that the APC chose to use the Indiana CFO definition rather than the federal's CAFO definition. So Indiana's CFO rules, the numbers of animals falling under regulation are lower. As Mr. Bedore made a mention that a question was made to him by a farmer who thinks we put too much regulation in place concerning animal agriculture, and is wondering if we can go back to what we had, where everyone had to get a special exception to make their case. The concern is the rules are too restrictive. Then we had a discussion that was as related to the rules that we have, that the horrible personal problems and subjective arguments that were made during the 3 CFO hearings were the impetus to try to develop a more rational approach. And if someone had the perfect site and was able to generate sufficient points through site location and best management practices, it would not be necessary to request a special exception permit. There's with Mr. Harrell, can we be more, asked the question, which we did not have the answer, can we be more restricted than state with regards to citing an application of manure? Okay, oh no, that was Mr. Eldridge, excuse me. Mr. Harrell was posing a question concerning regulations that prohibit or restrict the resale to John Baker, and if there are problems with restricting commerce. Mr. Welsh, are we talking about the prohibition of satellite manure storage and use? And there really wasn't, there's some conversation went on, but it really wasn't an answered question. Okay, trying to figure out who that is. Okay, then there's that explain that what is allowed, that would have been Mr. Flum explaining that was allowed under the state and item and state chemist. That issues in Ohio resulted from the over-application, and the question was whether or not can we require proof of appropriate use through soil samples before application. And some of the discussion related to that was that's part of the what goes on with the nutrient management plan, which includes also manure in addition to chemical fertilizers, non-organic fertilizers. Okay, Mr. Bridgeford, his cattle operation is an intensive grazing operation, and he does it with constant soil testing and monitoring related to his use of manure. Mr. Eldridge, should there be something with testing related to increasing concentrations with materials such as lead? Some areas, such as where he lives around the 40 and 8, are gravel with a low water table with high rates of soil percolation. Materials don't get trapped in soil, but rather in bodies of water. In the cases of ponds, lakes and ponds, they're trapped in the sediment. And then there was some discussion related to that. A lot of these other things are actually, such as these heavy metals. There's regulations through both the Indiana Department of Environmental Management and the EPA regarding concentrations. And that is something that isn't tested out actually in manure, if I understand correctly. Okay, all right. Okay, Mr. Whitaker. We face a similar and unique situation in Wayne and Fayette counties, in that another entity is exporting waste to our counties. We need to define satellite manure storage in a way that focuses on ensuring they are placed to minimize problems with residential properties and water health. There are specific things in manure, but we need to focus on what we put in the ordinance and emphasize the storage of manure. Mr. Bridgeford, we have a definition of manure storage and structures from IDEM, but then there's some conversation about that. Is it really what we're trying to get at into using their definition versus a very specific definition for Fayette County that clearly defines what we consider, for the purpose of our ordinance, what we consider the satellite manure storage. And this is related to concerns that were brought up by Mr. Nobby concerning whether it's 4-H and then other type uses, or uses such as Mr. Bridgeford's, and not unintentionally pull them into this particular issue. Okay, Mr. Whitaker asked a hypothetical question concerning the possibility of someone constructing a pond under the 8-item threshold, and can we require a lagoon to be built a certain way? He states that he wants to come away with an ag-friendly rule for siting a building. Mr. Bridgeford, we need to encourage the use of chicken litter, and because it's coming from an organic perspective of making use to getting away from just the chemicals and restoring both the nutrients and then also organic matter into the soil. And Mr. Flum, there's basically paraphrasing some of the other conversation that is concerned. Some of the members are concerned with what is a manure, and Mr. Bridgeford has not stopped its use in Fayette County as a fertilizer. Mr. Flum, everybody please provide 3 or 4 items the TAC members feel should help deal with the TAC focus. Okay, Mr. Flum, is that the state has not adopted construction rules for the construction of buildings to store dry manure. If IDEM was to process a building for dry manure storage, they would require an impermeable base, 1 foot thick, which could be soil or concrete, to reduce the risk of material leaching into the soil and groundwater. They do not consider whether or not sidewalls should be required. And I didn't catch who actually said it, but this does nothing for structures under the IDEM permit thresholds. Mr. Bridgeford, using manure makes economic sense for farmers. Mr. Eldridge, should not allow the importation of manure into Fayette County. Mr. Bedore, as commissioner, has major concerns that are related to environmental impact, economic impact to residential properties, and also place them where the impacts are minimal to those uses, and is also concerned about making sure that it does not have a negative effect on the ability of farmers to actually use the manure as a fertilizer. Mr. Breitenbaugh, there are dangerous things in manure, including antibiotic-resistant bacteria. Mr. Bedore, we can't change what is in the manure. We can control where it is and when it is put in a structure without running farmers out of business. Mr. Bridgeford, we can't prohibit manure, but can tell people they can't poison the water, destroy the value of their neighbor's property, and need to adapt to the standards of the state included in the information. Okay, Mr. Breitenbaugh, The Ohio problem resulted from industrial scale agriculture producing waste at industrial scale. Mr. Flum asked the question, should we differentiate, was trying to get discussion on the questions that the list I provided, but should we differentiate between how we treat liquid storage and dry storage? And various people involved with the discussion is lagoons are a bigger threat than dry storage. Sideboard is designed for the 100-year flood. Question isn't so much if they will overflow in a storm event, but rather when. And it was also pointed out that's one of the reasons that you're also seeing more use of liquid manure being stored in structures out of the outdoors. Okay, Mr. Harrell, what is the probability of someone building a lagoon specifically to receive manure? Is a question, no real answer. I think it was to how likely is that to really actually occur strictly for the use of just storing manure, just liquid manure, just to apply it. And it's getting into the, if I'm correct, Mr. Harrell is getting into the economic practicality of it. Is that correct?
I think we agreed that there wasn't much probability that someone would construct a lagoon just for a temporary storage of manure.
Yeah, because it's pretty costly.
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Flum then asked the question is, should there be no more new open lagoons? As a question for discussion. Mr. Bridgeford stated that they have a small pit that they use. Said that small producers will frequently need some sort of pit or lagoon to place manure after cleaning the barns and a stage before applying manure to fields. Mr. Bedore was, can we regulate how much can be stored at one location in Fayette County? Mr. That's a question that we need to, some of the legal issues that we need to discuss with Mr. Baker and have some legal research done on. Okay, no specific individual because discussion was flying pretty quickly by this point. And the risk from peasant farmers or future farmers with CFOs with regards to lagoons is low because they are very difficult to place in Fayette County, and the movement is to covered pits rather than open lagoons. Okay, Mr. Whitaker, I will ask the APC to consider nearby residential uses and consider neighboring counties in developing rules by asking for reciprocity. Mr. Whitaker, at the February 20th Wayne County APC meeting, there will probably be presentations to help plan commissions in the region understand different issues related to satellite storage. Okay, Mr. Harrell, the APC's responsibility is knowing that CAFOs will continue to exist, and it's how we will deal with the reality of excess animal waste in Fayette County. And comment on my part is we need to understand the key legal constraints to regulating satellite manure storage structures. And all the members that got the email I sent about the next Plan Commission meeting in Wayne County. And hey, Plan Commission members are also invited to attend, as are any county officials or city officials. And so far, the people that I believe are in places, there's someone from the State Chemist Office, there's an attorney associated with the Farm Bureau that's going to get into some of the legal questions and issues, and then there's going to be someone from Purdue. It's one of their livestock specialists who deals with manure. And that is the gist of it. I know I missed some, but I don't know if that pretty much captured everything.
The date and the time for the one at Wayne County, so anybody.
Okay, I don't have the date exactly with me. It's
the 24th.
24th. Okay, so it'll be the 24th. It'll be 2 weeks at 6:30 in the chambers in Wayne County for that meeting. So I know I will attend, and so I will reiterate that also when I send out this week the information to the committee members, and then also I'll remind the Plan Commission members and also zoning board members. And if there's anything else critical to the discussion we had that may have been missed, or some of the concerns with what was going on with the discussion at the meeting.
The only thing I can say that I think what we end up doing here in Fayette County is going to be used between us and Wells County is going to be used kind of as a guideline. And I think all the counties in the state are starting to really look at this potential problem. So I think we got to be real careful how we word everything because it's going to be used as a guideline around the state, I think, on how we've done it, so. And Gabe, for you, one of the things I wanted to make sure that we put in this, that these guidelines do not apply to 4-H, because they're only dealing with a few animals, and we don't want to hinder them at all, so we want them to be excluded from these guidelines, so.
Would that then exclude, like, club calf or club pig producers as well? I mean, because a lot of times, you might go to a farm and, pick your steer, pick your barrel, and then buy that. And they usually are smaller, but they may have substantial numbers.
Yeah. Well, I don't know, we're talking about it, but I see we'll bring that up.
I think maybe instead of just limit to 4-H or whatever, I think there needs to be a size. I mean, because even with like maybe organics, if they want to have an organic farm or something like that, their number's probably not going to be nearly as large as the CAFO, so maybe size would be a better way to handle that instead of just pulling that group out.
Because I know that I've had some past conversations with, Mr. Flum, and, which is hence the idea that what we would adopt specifically for Fayette County would emphasize that it's, really emphasize that the satellite manure storage is manure coming from someplace else. From
That's the key.
That's
the key.
From a CFO, from a CAFO, whether it's Indiana or out of state, basically being imported. Because we really want to try to have language which minimizes the need to have put in place a lot of the exemptions and have really the language that's in there that makes it very clear that this is all that this is really applying to. And I think that might be something that you're also referring to as size is probably something I think to take into consideration too.
Yeah, you just don't want to get into the place where you're closing the door on commerce either.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You got to be
I
real
think
careful with
that's a
that.
big word.
And because it's Mr. Bridgeford mentioned is that what he emphasizes that what he does with agriculture is he doesn't go all the way to getting classified as organic just because of the time frame that's involved. But all of the practices he performs are based on organic agriculture, which includes the use of manure and as a fertilizer.
And that's another thing I was kind of thinking. I know there's a lot of discussion about the use of manure because it stinks. That's one of the primary reasons. But I don't think a lot of people take in consideration the opposite effect of maybe using the chemicals. I mean, because if you don't use manure, you're using anhydrous ammonia or some other liquid fertilizers that are a lot more dangerous potentially than manure. So I think there's two sides of this that we got to be very careful with.
Maybe the question then with you also is that, because I'm certainly not an expert of dealing with this organic agriculture, but if you aren't using the manure, what other means are, other than crop stubble, what other means really are there to get any of the organic material back in the soil?
Organic, there is none,
No.
other than those two, basically.
Because that's what I thought.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, that's
So
it.
it's either, so basically really I assume then it's either using stubble, whether it's the actual manure itself whether it's from the liquid or in this manner, or whether it be something to be composted, but doesn't composting lose a lot of the nutrients if it's composted before it's applied?
It can be, I mean, to some degree. And it depends. Chicken manure is pretty hot anyways. I mean, it's...
Yeah, it doesn't take much over an acre. And it's been a proven fact that per acre, there's more chemicals applied to golf courses and lawns than there is to agricultural
Absolutely.
ground. Per acre. And Gabe is right, I think educating the people that, look, we either have one or two choices. We either use manure, which is a natural product, or we use a man-made chemical, and which could be, has just as much as effect on the ground as what, manure does.
But it's I don't know if Mr. Harrell, Mr. Bedore, Mr. Slum shared some of my feelings during this. Is I personally felt as some of the topics and some of the conversation was veering away really what the Technical Advisory Committee was tasked for. I don't know if you have that feelings or if you would like, as a committee, a little bit more specific direction from the overall Plan Commission.
That's going to be obviously very hard to keep focused on what our objective here is. I don't obviously want this thing to drag out even close to what the CAFO situation happened. We have 2 more meetings, and this next meeting, we should have 2 or 3 opinions from everybody. And I think that by the March meeting, if we don't really have anything in place, I'm going to suggest that we come back to the area planning and say that we are not going to reach an agreement, and we're going to suggest that Bill come up with a plan, and we'll go, and then we'll review it at that point in time.
Well, depending upon what happens after this next meeting, 'cause I know some of the members of the Plan Commission have been on the Plan Commission longer, as often as possible, I like to, demonstrate here's a range of the particular options. Now, as far as coming out of things with these discussions with the committee, would that be beneficial to the rest of the Plan Commission? If I can then start framing the discussion as far as here's the basic options that are really discussed, would that be beneficial for the members of the Plan Commission? Because it could be any, for example, it's just like one of the questions is going around. Could anywhere be from, say, one option might be nope, yet none at all, to do you then treat, at what point was there a special exception, at what point might there be an actual permit? Is a special exception required at all times? Then would be a range of potential options, say, as far as, say, setbacks, things like that. Would that be beneficial then to, like I said, after the next meeting, to Plan Commission members and then potentially to the Advisory Committee? And it might be a way for me to also organize everything that's going on also.
I mean, at one point in time, we had got off on a discussion about mulch. I mean, I don't understand, you know what I mean? It was a sidebar, so like he was saying earlier, we need to stick to the task at hand on what we're doing, not...
Where's the state fall on this? I mean, it's not just a Fayette County issue, and it's affecting a lot of the counties around this area.
Well, I had
so-
made a phone call to the state representative, Cindy Zemke, and she said she was going to look into it a little bit more, but she knew nothing about it. And the fact that I had mentioned that Mr. Flum had done something years ago, and then she said, oh yeah, I remember hearing something about that, but it died, and that was the last we heard about it, or they had heard. She wasn't there at the time, so she's going back to looking at it, but at this point in time, there's really nothing on the table that the state is prepared to do. They're looking into it, but nothing they're going to do right at this moment.
Is the only thing that's happened so far were those discussions that led to the rules for IDEM, and then then the organic fertilizer, the staging rules. So it's something that doesn't seem to be too much at the state level. I think they're probably following rather than leading. And I don't know, would that be a fair assumption from?
I got a question, John. Obviously, if an individual wants to bring it into his farm and dump a pile in his field, that's pretty much, that doesn't really fall under these guidelines. But trying to actually eliminate it being brought in and stored in a large facility, if we try to do that, is there going to be legal problems?
More than likely, because you're prohibiting the use as opposed to regulating the use.
Right. So then, we can't do that, so basically our job is to determine,
Reasonable regulations.
how much, where it can be placed, where the buildings can be placed and things like that.
Yeah, your safest approach, I think, and this is based somewhat on the CAFO work that's been done already, is to concentrate on distance requirements.
Yes.
From other entities, you know,
Yes.
that's the safest requirement. And, process. I think if you get into prohibition entirely, then that does have some interstate commerce issues that could be raised. And, but, you know, I don't know that there's a big difference between the substance, whether it's in-state or out-of-state. I guess it's about the same. So I don't know that you have to worry about differentiating between the two. It's just a matter of looking at, to some extent, the CAFO ordinance as your guideline, and I think, and looking at the way it was done there, because that seemed to work out real well, and it seemed to have some reasonable and regulations that weren't arbitrary or capricious, as you see in the cases, you know, that were not. And the home rule allows cities and counties, generally speaking, if the state has acted, if they've passed regulations, administrative rules and regulations or statutes, or if it's in the Constitution, we can't do anything that's less restrictive than that. There's a law that says we may do some things that are more restrictive than that. And that's something to keep in mind as well. For example, in the IDM regs, there's certain things that are not addressed based on size. The smaller ones aren't, the larger ones are. So I think a county could reasonably address some of the smaller operations if you chose to do so. A lot of issues, a lot of legal issues. I like Bill's idea of trying to get together some broad outline of what you want to do, and then let me take a look at it to see if we have anything that really is way out in trouble from a legal standpoint or not. That looks to me like that would be a time saver.
Yeah, I think so, and also potentially a big money saver.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
When this petition was first presented, the word that I asked about that night is satellite.
Yep.
When we talk about CAFOs, we're talking about agriculture, animal agriculture of animals that's being raised and produced within the county. The result of that is some animal waste, and then we need some kind of regulations to handle that huge amount of animal waste from the animals that's produced within the county. When you say satellite, you're talking about taking that problem of raising animals that we deal with the animals that's raised here, and bringing that problem to the county without the benefit of the animals being raised in the county. To me, that's what the word satellite is. And the only thing we should be dealing with here is waste from animals that's not raised within the county.
Yes.
That would eliminate any problem about any regulations we already have. That wouldn't change it.
One thing I would caution as far as what I gathered from what you just said, Ed, was that if somebody had something grown, like say Posey Township, but wanted to store as manure in south of Everton,
But it's still in the county.
that's still in county, but that wouldn't be
Would that be satellite?
local,
That's a
or would
question.
that be
satellite?
considered
Sure.
satellite? So that would be something.
The whole,
the
to me, the
committee
whole
would need
key
to
is
look at.
defining what that word satellite means.
Well, and here's the thing I think we sometimes get lost on. We say that manure is a problem. The manure is not the problem. It's a solution to fertilizer. That's
Oh, yeah.
that's something that we got to look at. I mean, and from just a a common sense approach. If a person had a lot trucked in and needed a place to store it to distribute to a large number of fields, that kind of makes a little bit of sense.
It does.
And I don't know, I'm very leery about putting a lot of regulations to it, because if you got a lot of size to a farm, and you got several locations, it only makes sense to dump it in one and then spread it out over time as you get an opportunity to. So,
Jason, to yours, the first thing that I want done, is I want to control the location of those because of the smell and the contamination. So if we control them, the location based on like CAFOs, even if he wanted to go from
Yeah,
Posey to,
yeah.
as long as he's got the setback guidelines down
I'm
there,
right with you there
it's
on
okay.
that. But it's just, that's something that, we can talk about
Yeah.
what's brought into the county versus what's produced in the
Yes,
county,
yeah,
but
that's true.
it's the same manure, chemically, or whatever, that has the same issues no matter where it's generated. And that's just something that the technical advisory committee needs to keep in mind. It's not necessarily what's brought into the county, it's
Right.
where we store it.
Well, I think
That's the issue.
The other thing that you were saying was satellite is the case of, like he was saying, somebody brings it in, trucks it in and puts it in the field and they're gonna spread it around mutually, then, I guess my idea is the minute I hear satellite, I'm thinking of a 30-foot building in the middle of a field full of manure. That's kind of what comes to mind when you say satellite manure, satellite. So, I get, because that's generated for storage for, many other uses, as in a farmer bringing in just, hey, I've got 7 fields I need to spread it out on,
I think by all of our discussion within this county so far, I think Wayne now has realized there's a potential problem, and they're trying to start to deal with it now. So I think other counties are really going to start jumping on board on trying to set guidelines up like we've already started to set.
And that's one of the reasons that Mr. Higginbotham in Wayne County has gone to the effort to make arrangements to invite these people to that particular plan commission meeting, and then also to then invite people from the surrounding counties, the plan commissions, and you've also made clear that also members of the Farm Bureau are invited to the meeting, because it's, it applies to all the counties around, and it's easier you do it all at a central location, you have all the information at this one meeting, so you aren't repeating these various meetings, everyone can get the same information at the same time.
That's correct. Okay.
Sounds good.
So we'll know a lot more next meeting, hopefully.
Okay, any other discussion on the satellite manure structures? Okay, next up is the director's report.
That's in the folder I left behind, I apologize. I did have it, but I'll just put,
Get out of here, really.
I'll just explain what was in it though.
Okay.
Is all we had last month was 7 permits.
Okay.
Okay, we had, 4 permits, 7 permits January last year. And out of those there's one large permit, it was for that Connersville Commons.
Okay.
Yeah, for the Goodwill store.
Yeah.
Of course, not much is happening because it's been really cold.
Yeah.
So so that was the only big permit. I think that was a $1.2 million project. Other than that, of course, with the cold, there weren't a lot of inspections. I only drove about 75 miles, and I think about 17 inspections. And most of them were plumbing and electric, and did get 2 people who snuck in a couple of foundations.
Oh, you did.
Yeah. And with the concrete block still sitting on site.
I'll bet. Big old.
You forget the gentleman.
We'll table that till the next one.
Yes, like I said, I do apologize for that. I had it, but
Can you bring us up to speed on the complaint we had last month?
yes,
Mr. Reardon?
the violation notice was sent out to the property owner. We have a 30-day response period in the zoning code. I haven't had a response. And the response is either fix the problem, appeal the order within the 30 days, or that's pretty much it.
How many days are left?
There's about, I think between 2 and 3 weeks. It's been within the last couple of weeks I sent it in. I can't tell you the date right offhand. But they have he said we have a specific process we have to follow. We have to, everyone has to be the same way as far as, the time frames for compliance.
Is that letter sent out certified?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah, I sent it out certified. We send it out certified, or there's times when people have rejected the letters, is I worked up with Sheriff Wason a form to where we then request, and the Sheriff's Department will hand deliver the letter. I've had a few of those, and those ones have gotten fixed amazingly fast after a sheriff shows up at your door.
Well, okay.
Do you have anything to add to that, or?
No, just that it's been there 6 months, and there is an ordinance on it for it not to be there. It was imposed in February 3rd, 1993. Just as long as something's done about it, that's all I'm asking.
Right.
So we should know next meeting.
Next meeting?
I'll see you then.
Okay.
Fine can be put on their taxes.
Yeah, liens.
2,500 of it is the maximum.
Right.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other discussion by board members?
We want to move forward with our appointment to the BZA.
Yes, we are missing that. We didn't that last week because we do now have,
Mr. O'Neill.
and Mr. Harrell, Mr. Hilton isn't here, so.
Flip a coin, fellas.
If you're not familiar with what we're discussing, one of the, I'll let you explain it.
Okay, one thing that, well, there's certain requirements for people members of the Board of Zoning Appeals. And there's certain people that are prohibited. For example, is nobody can be on because of its, as they call it, it's a quasi-judicial, role. So what they do is, elected officials are specifically prohibited from serving on this board. So we have 4 citizens that are actually appointed by the mayor and then also the county commissioners. And then there's one member of the actual citizen appointee, the Area Plan Commission, is appointed to the Board of Zoning Appeals. And this person, and this is reappointed each year, this particular position. So it's an annual appointment. And so potentially there'd be 3 people. That would be Mr. Hilton, yourself, Mr. O'Neill, and then also Mr. Harrell.
If Dick wants to do it, that's fine. If he don't want to do it, I think you should do it.
Well, that's what I was wondering, because Mr. Harrell is a lot more familiar and probably more comfortable with dealing with the zoning board. Of course, I don't want to put words in your mouth, Ed.
No, I don't know. Dick's been around a while.
Oh, yeah.
I think you should do it. All right.
We have someone that make the,
I nominate Ed.
okay.
I'll second that.
Close nominations?
Close to close.
You can have it next
All
year.
right. All in favor of Mr. Harrell being appointed to the BZA, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, congratulations, Ed.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Any other discussion from board members? Okay, with that, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Adjourned.
Dick, what did he mean when he